this semester as leadership for the Office of Teaching and Learning during this time of transition. I think we know that Robin Tarosian has a great new opportunity at Northeastern, and we wish him great success. And in his absence now, we try to figure out how to restart and refocus and reframe in light of this unique time we are all working in. So through the assistance and collaboration with Lori Benson and our faculty fellows, Andrea Cayson and Castania Lisette, we all got together and really just said, you know, what's the most urgent thing on our minds right now? And we really know that student engagement has been a topic that has been a focus for discussion and trying to think about how this work exists in this new teaching and learning environment. So I'm grateful to both of our faculty fellows. Castania facilitated a session on Tuesday, and then today will be led by Andrea Cayson to talk about this really important topic. I wanted to just say hello and let you know that we are very open to your ideas for the role that OTL can play in supporting our journey through this new setting. I want you to know my face, but also I'm going to post my email in the chat. We would really love to hear from you. Some things are different for sure in how we work together, as well as the fact that we only have 2 fellows versus 3. You have me instead of Robin. Things are very different now, but the thing that remains the same is our commitment to support and our commitment to developing an engaging community for faculty to learn and share and grow in their teaching and learning. So I wanted you to see me. I'm not going to be able to stay for the whole time because of another meeting. This is like the story of my world, but in case I drop off at the end, I wanted to say hello and also introduce Andrea Cayson. Andrea's commitment to this topic is incredible. She brings her scholarship to this discussion. She brings her commitment to BSU to this discussion, and she brings her belief on the role that students play in co-creating these engaging educational environments. So we are so lucky today to be joined by her. Andrea's associate professor in elementary and early childhood education, and has been doing some great work in the Office of Teaching and Learning on how we can hear the voice of students in this process. I think you're going to have some great stuff in store for you today. Andrea.
All right, well, thank you, all of you, for attending this morning. And this, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir because I know most of you, and I've heard good things about everyone who's on this screen right now. And I know that this is a group of faculty who are committed to student engagement. So this is definitely a time for conversation this morning. This is not the Andrea Cayson show or the OTL show. This is a conversation time this morning. Each of you have unique ways that you have engaged your students this semester and last spring and in the past. So please contribute. Feel free at any moment to unmute yourself and interrupt and say, oh, I'd like to add something, or I have a question, or this is how I've used it in my classroom. Because the more that we share the strategies and how we're using them in the classroom, the more that each of us can grow and expand our own ways of thinking and ways of engaging students. So please share your expertise with all of us this morning. Again, this is very casual. This is very informal. This is just a group of folks getting together, talking about a topic that is of interest and near and dear to all of our hearts. All right. So let's start this morning by jumping right in and getting engaged ourselves. Because I'd like us to talk about, 1 second, and I will demonstrate that I cannot talk and start my slides at the same time. Okay, there we go. Give me a thumbs up if you don't mind, Lori. Can you see my screen? Okay, thank you. All right, let's jump right in and talk about student engagement and how do we define student engagement. So I want you to think for a moment, if you could think of one word to describe student engagement, think of that word. Just think for just a moment, one word. Okay, and while I'm copying this, well, here we go. Here's my first realistic thing. Why won't this link copy? All right, I'll do it a different way while you're thinking. What I'm going to do is copy and paste into the chat room a link to a poll everywhere. And poll everywhere is a fantastic way to get folks thinking at the beginning, or at any point during your work together with students synchronously. But the purpose today is for us to gather ideas, gather your thoughts on how do you describe student engagement. So when I get the link, copy over into the chat, you are going to click on it and you will see a square come up that looks very similar to this at the bottom of my screen. And it says engagement. You are going to type your one-word response in that box in just a moment here. So let me get this copied, and I'm not sure why it's not copying. So hold on one second. Let me stop sharing. And I will go about this a different way. I said to Cindy at the beginning that I tested everything last night. I even sent the link to my husband with a different email. It worked perfectly, but that was last night and today's a new day. All right, I've got the link now posted into the chat room. So cross your fingers, click on that link and type your one word that you think of when you think of student engagement.
I'm just getting a message saying that I'm waiting for your presentation to begin in the poll everywhere screen.
Yeah, I'm having the same
Same
message.
Andrea, you might need to within poll everywhere. I know there's an activate button.
It's activated.
Oh, it is. You know, maybe it might be the URL. I know you can do.
You know what? I just refreshed. Like I just refreshed it.
It just worked. It's working now.
All right. Yeah. Okay, and what we've got is we've created a word cloud with all of the words that you guys are typing in. And what's interesting about a word cloud is that the size of the word depends on how many people have typed that word. So let's say with the word interaction, if more people had typed in that same word, it would be much bigger. But look how it's kind of interesting how all of our words have come out about the same size, which means there's about equal numbers of people saying, oh, now it's just changed a little, more people have typed interaction. This is a great way to collectively gather some thoughts at the beginning of a class, middle of a class, end of a class, wherever you want to use it. It's a great poll everywhere is a wonderful way to hold students accountable for reading, any outside of class assignment, outside of class work. But let's look at some of these words: curious, interaction, essential, participating, connected, interaction as a key word there that many people are feeling like student engagement is, ways to describe them. Energetic, I love that word. I feel like this semester, I'm struggling a little bit with lack of energy, not feeling that energy that you feel when you walk into a classroom and there's lots of people there. So trying to replicate, how can we generate that same amount of energy in a remote environment is a little bit of a challenge this semester. I'm not sure if anyone else is feeling that challenge. I miss sometimes that little bit of a high you get at the end of a class when you leave and it has been very engaging and interactive, and that energy, you kind of leave on this high. And sometimes I feel like I leave my remote synchronous classes exhausted instead of feeling that high. So this semester, I've really worked to increase the level of interactiveness in the class. And I feel like, what is this, 6 weeks in? I feel like it's just now I'm starting to feel that high at the end of class again. That sense of, okay, this was not just me pouring out everything. It's everyone working together and contributing to build on our knowledge together. All right. What I'd like us to do now is hear from a student perspective. We have a fantastic student, Jacob, who's joining us this morning. He is actually involved in some current research on engaging students during remote learning. And he is just absolutely becoming an expert on this topic. He helped put together many of the information that we're going to share with each other today. And I think it's awesome to hear from an expert who is also a BSU student. So I'm going to turn it over to Jacob, and he's going to share a few things with us this morning. Thank you so much for joining us, Jacob.
Yeah, no problem. She says expert, use that term lightly. I've just started researching it and taking a Psych 250, which is independent research. And one of the things I'm interested in is student engagement. So that's what I'm researching this semester. So I'm just kind of getting into it. But yeah, so I was asked to put together like a little presentation, slideshow or whatever. So I put together a slideshow. So let me try to share it. Let's see. Can you guys see that?
Yes, we can see it.
Cool, all right. All right, so who am I? I'm Jacob Yellow. I'm a psychology student. I'm a sophomore. I work with the OTL in the Pedagogic Partnership Program. I assume many of you guys know what that is. I've been doing it for over a year now, so it's been really rewarding. Gotten to work with a lot of different people, Robin, Melissa Winchell, and now Cindy. I'm also an Eagle Scout. I made Eagle Scout a few years back now. And for those of you who don't know, to make Eagle Scout, you have to put together a community service project. So I started a community band for 5th and 6th graders. I'm a musician, so it was just really rewarding. And so now I teach music, like private lessons and over the summer and stuff. So that's what really got me interested in teaching. I was kind of thrown headfirst into it. And now I'm starting to do research to learn some techniques and stuff. And so yeah, that's pretty cool. So we're going to talk about student engagement, but we're going to do it through the lens of student roles. I just so happened to be reading an article that defines different student roles when I was asked to come talk today. And I thought, wow, this fits perfectly. And I wanted to share it with you guys. So, so this is the name of the study. It's What's in a Name? Unpacking, oh boy. Oh man, 1 second. Sorry about that. I was trying to move you guys so I could read it and I accidentally clicked. So What's in a Name? Unpacking students' roles in higher education through neoliberal and social justice lenses. And so this just kind of talks about like 4 different roles of students. It actually talks about 5, but the 5th one isn't really applicable, so we won't even touch upon it. All right, so this is just some questions to think about as I'm talking. Which role do you think you best fit into when you attended university as a student? In your opinion, does one role lead to better success than another? Which student role is the best fit for your class, both now and before the shift to online learning? And do you think maybe your class could be better adapted to fit some of these roles? All right, so the first role is a student as a consumer. So in this role, students, they pay tuition and fees, and in return, they get knowledge and a degree. It's almost looked at as being kind of transactional. So in a class that might look like lectures, like your standard online, like Blackboard quizzes, it's very cut and dry. Universities love this because it's very easy for them. All they really have to do is kind of keep the students happy, have them come back, get them a job after college, and that's all they need. You know, they'll get more money. But trying to keep students happy really has an impact on the pedagogies and the curriculum as a professor, because you're just trying to keep students happy. And for students to learn, sometimes you have to make them uncomfortable, you have to make them unhappy. I know personally I've grown most from the difficult times in my classes. So yeah. The next is students as producers. I think this is where we see a lot of the students that like stick out in mind, you know. So like rather than like just giving lectures a sage and the stage idea of like that educational consumerism that we were just talking about, students as producers, they add value. This is where professors become more learning facilitators than just like givers of knowledge. This is where, you know, students are no longer empty vessels, where you're just trying to fill them with knowledge. So in this role, students, they both develop their intellectual skills, but also social skills. So this is where you would see like discussion boards or having like pairs of students like running a Zoom meeting, explaining a chapter. Some ideas for like quizzes might be like recording videos, explaining or teaching content to like a family member or a friend. And students as producers, it allows them to draw on their diverse backgrounds and teach each other things that you as a professor might not have known or even planned to teach. This might be culture, different personal experiences, that sort of thing. And especially having such a diverse background at Bridgewater, this is super important. So then there's students as co-creators. This is similar to students as producers, but this lens kind of looks at them more as their impact amongst other students. So you can see this when students are designing their own program of study. Another thing that I did that really falls under this is I had a class where we actually designed our own syllabus. And this was a good way for us to get involved in the class. Obviously, it was a smaller class, and it wasn't like, you know, introduction to physics. You know, it was a more niche class than that. But yeah, it's a good way to get students to work with each other. And it's just slightly different from the producer role. And the last one is students as partners. Now that's me in the OTL. You got to take the hierarchy of like classic, like university settings and just like throw it out the window. You know, because as like technology and education are like changing, it's difficult to keep up. I even have difficulty keeping up. I feel like every day something new is happening with technology. People call me a boomer because like I can't keep up even though I'm like 19. It's so annoying. But you got to consider that with your students, there's a power difference, you know. Of course, you want students' feedback, but at the end of the day, students are worried, well, if I give my honest feedback, is that going to reflect in my grade? And unfortunately, sometimes I feel like it does. But with the OTL and a partnership program, you can have a student there who isn't being graded and just giving, you know, objective observation to make the classroom better for both, you know, the students and the professors. And so, like I said, that's what the OTL does with the pedagogic partnership program. So why did I share this with you? Well, because the best professors I've had, I think, designed classes with this in mind. They were able to say, you know, I want my students to be just consumers. And then they would give lectures and they were consistent. Or they said, you know, I want my students to be producers. And so they would have, you know, students preparing like a PowerPoint for a chapter and teach the class for a day. I also wanted to remind you that you can shape the role that your students take. You know, if you on day one show up and just do lectures, I can guarantee students probably won't be too thrilled and they probably won't participate. Of course, there are topics that you need to lecture. But I know as a student, lecturing makes me want to turn off my camera and go watch TV or play Xbox, you know, which tons of students are doing. If you can see them looking above the camera, they're definitely watching TV. I know that because I've done it. Spoiler. And I also, you know, when reading this, it helped me rethink my teaching. Of course, I'm in a music setting, so it's a lot different. But these roles are still, you know, fairly similar, even though they're 5th and 6th graders. You know, you still have people there are kids whose parents just sent them, and they're there playing clarinet because they have to. But then you have the people who, the students who want to help me write music and they want to learn how to conduct, and those are those producers and the co-creators, and they tend to get a lot more out of my lessons. So yeah, let's see. You guys have any questions for me? Should I take that as a no?
Maybe, is this your last slide, Jacob?
It is, yes.
Can you stop sharing so we can all see each other?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I definitely have a question, well, or at least a comment. So I don't know if I have been intentionally thinking about the role that I want my students to play in the class. I've just always been thinking, I want them engaged, I want them doing things. So this has helped challenge me to think about what are the specific roles I want my students to play. I think without intentionally deciding this ahead of time, I want them to be producers. However, I'm going to take some time now to really evaluate that. So I appreciate you sharing. Have you ever had professors share this with their students? So share the different roles that students may play, so that students are aware of this.
Yeah, to add to your first point, it's important to note that you can have an engaged student even if they are a consumer. The way that this is set up kind of makes it seem like being a consumer is a bad thing. That's not always the case. And once you decide the role, then you can work on engagement, and there's engagement at every level. I have had teachers kind of assign my role, but never this explicitly. And it's not always verbal. A lot of times it's in the way that they've set up the curriculum and their lesson plans. But I have had a professor that said, I don't want you guys to just be passive consumers of knowledge. This was in high school, because I'm only a sophomore. I've only had a few professors. But actually that teacher was what really got me into student engagement, because he explained learning facilitation to me. And he said, I don't want you to be here because you have to be here. I want you to be here and work with me to get to a greater understanding. And that was mind blowing to me, because I'd always just gone and done what I had to and left,
Anyone else? Any questions for Jacob? We have a student right here who's willing and able to answer any questions from the inside perspective.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you're talking about with students as partners and producers, that involves a lot of things like students doing presentations and things like that. And I understand, I do that sometimes because I think it helps the students doing the presentation, that people learn things by presenting and by teaching. But I always find other students kind of tune out when classmates are presenting. Like, it's hard for me to get engagement from the students who aren't presenting. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on how to kind of like increase peers' engagement with their own peers. Like, because you're talking about how a lot of people tune out during lectures, and I think students also tune out, maybe even more so, when they feel like other students are kind of lecturing or, presenting to them.
Yeah, that's where some real world skills really come in. I had a professor last fall. She said, each chapter is going to be presented by a group of students. And let's find ways to make all of your presentations meaningful, impactful, engaging. And so we went through the third day of class and we wrote down a bunch of ideas, maybe poll everywhere, having discussion, agree, disagree. And each group of presenters was required to pick 3 of those techniques, those pedagogies. And granted, it was a small class, but I think it was really impactful for getting us all involved. And it also taught us skills so we could use those to present more effectively next time we had to present in a different class or a different setting.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Now, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I had to pull down my Sully headset. Jacob, thank you for taking your time doing this. I know that right now is, especially midpoint in the semester, it's probably overwhelming. So I appreciate you being honest with us. So hopefully you can be honest with this question. I know that what you just spoke of is with synchronous classes, but are you taking any classes that are asynchronous?
Unfortunately.
Okay. All right. So, so my question then, with that particular class or other classes that you have that are asynchronous, are there things that the professor could do or is doing that is increasing your engagement with that content? And if not, what kind of advice could you give to us that could help promote student engagement with those non-live classes?
So I have 2 classes. One of them, the professor is able to hold us accountable. They have due dates. They're flexible, but they're due dates that require us to really be doing our work. And that looks like, video presentations for quizzes, explaining content to other people, that sort of thing. And that keeps me a little bit more engaged because I know I have to be engaged. Discussion boards, as much as a lot of students don't like discussion boards, it makes us really think. It makes us do the homework, because you can tell on a discussion board if somebody didn't do the reading.
Yeah.
Especially discussion boards where the professor makes it so you have to answer before you can see other people's work. Because I know a lot of students will just go in, they'll look at somebody else's response, and then they'll just like pick some stuff from that and then reword it. But yeah, asynchronous courses are a challenge. I'm a resident assistant on campus, so I have a lot of students. I have a good mix. Got some freshmen, some juniors and seniors, and the biggest thing is that they're all struggling. They're all lacking motivation. A lot of them are dealing with depression that they haven't felt before, especially the freshmen. It's really scary for them. And their biggest thing is that the asynchronous classes, they feel like they don't have a connection with their professors or the classmates. So do with that information what you will. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but I think making a connection with the students is really important. And some ways to do that could be, making like a mandatory office hour where you require that they show up with you, and have a discussion at least once during the semester. If they can get to know you and you can get to know them, I think that learning will be a lot easier.
Wow.
And I'll just give a plug for my colleague, Castania. On Tuesday, she gave an excellent talk similar to this on connecting with students in an asynchronous platform. It's fantastic. And it's been video recorded. And if Cindy could remind me, where have we made that available? Have we made that available yet to the faculty?
Not yet. We're trying to figure out how to do that. We will though.
Soon coming. All right. But it is fantastic. And I'm telling you, Jacob, she touched on all of the things that you just said right there. But she gave some very hands-on demonstrations of how she's done it in her asynchronous classes, and it's fantastic. I've walked away with at least 3 ideas that I will be implementing. In fact, one I've already implemented since Tuesday. So they're easy. They're like not super time consuming on the part of the professor, but ways to reach out to students. So
that's awesome.
I highly recommend take a look at that.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks, Jacob. That's your honest perception is very valuable. So please know that.
Thanks.
And before Jacob takes off, I'm going to do one little quick plug for OTL, a little commercial break right now. Jacob is one of our pedagogical partners. So if you are interested, you can have a student like Jacob who has been well trained in coming in, being a part of your class in a non-evaluative way, but in a feedback role, to offer you some tips like this is what your class looks like from a student perspective. And we've seen this morning how valuable that is. So if you are interested in that, you can reach out to OTL, because we've got some students who, again, well-trained and ready to go in this capacity. All right, if there's no more questions, we're going to let Jacob say goodbye so that he can get on with his life and on with his busy day. Thank you so much, Jacob.
Thank you, everyone. Jacob. I appreciate it. Take care now.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's see how our time, we're doing really good on time. So what I'd like us to do now is take a brief moment. I don't want us to go down the rabbit hole. I just want us to talk a minute about webcams, because I see on the faculty listserv, this is still a hot topic. Webcams on or off. So we are going to do a Padlet, which is a way to engage your students during synchronous class sessions If you haven't done Padlet, let me show you now what it's going to look like. It's very simple. So I've got a Padlet. We're going to discuss your pros and cons for webcams on or webcams off. When you get the link in just a moment in the chat room, you'll go to this Padlet, and all you do is double click and a little white box shows up, and you can type whatever you want. And if you realize, oh, I didn't mean to type that thing, you can just delete it. So please, if you think about pros for webcams on and cons for webcams on, and you can just click, double click and type anywhere, and then you're free to move it around, put it on the pro side or the con side. So let's take just a moment and again, cross your fingers and go to that link, and I'll see in just a moment what some of your thoughts are for webcams on or webcams off. And if you find that you're typing and you're over someone else's comment, you can move your comment, drag and slide your comment so we can see all of it. Okay. Again, if your comment is hidden, you can click it and drag, or I can do it. So what's kind of nice about this, as the professor who started the Padlet, you do have the ability to move, or I wouldn't do it, but delete if you needed to for whatever reason, someone else's comments. I just always make sure I ask, like, do you mind if I move your comments around a little bit so we can see all of them?
I used this in a undergraduate class with 26 students, and I was overwhelmed with everything that was on the screen. So I haven't used it, and I'm wondering, how do you contain some of the chaos?
I can actually show you one. I'll show you one that I have where it was a lot of information that went on a Padlet and how I organized it.
Okay, and the other thing
when you're looking at this, I agree, like it's a lot of stuff there. How do you even sort through?
Well, I thought about putting them into groups and having the group put one response. You can't break them out into groups and have them use Padlet. I couldn't figure out how to do that.
Okay, I can show you how I did it in just a moment.
Okay, cool.
I'll show you guys one. I have one ready to share that I did in the class where, like you said, it was a ton of information that went on it. All right, so I'm seeing lots of reasons in support of webcams on, and then reasons in support of not requiring them to be on. And there's no right or wrong. It's just some things that we need to consider. While we're on this Padlet, I'll click over, since we had the question about how do you organize. So I did this 2 or 3 weeks ago in my math methods for future elementary teachers. And what we did was we looked at all of the standards from pre-K through 8th grade for math, and it's massive. So I put them into groups. I think I had 6 breakout groups, and I assigned each breakout group a level of standards to look at. Then I shared the Padlet like I did with all of you. So everyone went to the Padlet link first, and then they went to their breakout groups. So they were able in breakout groups to write, and I did the categories at the top. So I had these pre-written, pre-K, kindergarten, 1st grade. The levels I wrote across the top. And then we've used Padlet quite a bit, so they were already familiar with how to keep your comments lined up, because it's very important in this situation to keep all your pre-K things that you're saying about the standards under pre-K and under kindergarten and so forth. So we had 6 breakout groups spanning all of these different standards, writing what they noticed in each of the standards for each of the different topics that are covered in math. And, you know, we took about 20 minutes to complete this work that they did. When it was over, like, we had this awesome map of the standards, and people could look across the standards and see, for example, you know, looking at operations and algebraic thinking, we can look at that first grade, second grade, third grade. We were able to move our boxes around and line up going horizontally so we could see this crosswalk across all the standards. So it did work that I had 6 breakout groups working on one document.
So
And
you put them in breakout groups and then gave them the link once they were in the group to this page?
no, I actually gave the link first. So I did exactly what we did here. I gave the link in the chat room to everyone. And I said, okay, so click on, you know, click on the link. You can open it now or just have it saved to open in a moment. And then I opened the breakout groups and it worked.
All right, thank you.
Padlet, like I said, is an excellent way to have your students engage. Whoops, I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth. Have your students engage with content, share their thinking, share their ideas, holding accountable, all those things. Like, it's excellent, and it's fairly easy to use. When we get to one of the slides, I am going to give you a little tip about the free and how to keep it free. So I'll give you that tip in a moment. But back to webcams, on or off. You know, this is a hot topic, and there's a lot of discussion for and against having webcams on. But there's just a few things I wanted us to draw our attention to, some things we need to consider. And of course, the first consideration is equity. When your webcam is on, it requires that you have high-speed internet and that you have a newer computer that can accommodate and handle all of this load. Last night in my graduate class, when the storm was going on, we were having problems because of the internet connection. So I said, you know what, why don't we all just turn our webcams off for a moment? And it really did help. It absolutely did help. But we also have to consider issues of equity with home life. I am shocked this semester about how many students I have, both undergrad and grad, with kids at home. And this, you know, it's so much easier for parents who have kids in the home to turn the webcams off so that they can deal with their children or deal with whatever they need to deal with at home. Plus, I've noticed many of my undergrads are back home and they look like they're in their bedroom from when they were 5 years old. There's pink frilly canopy beds, and you know, they're back in their home with their childhood home. And I think that some of them are a little maybe embarrassed about that, or they feel uncomfortable sharing about that. And all of our homes, you know, people have different situations at home. And so we need to be respectful of that with our students. It can also be distracting. Having webcams on can be distracting for students and faculty. For students, some of the distractions are they feel pressure to perform, pressure to look a certain way. There's research that's showing female students feel an increased pressure with having their hair and makeup and clothes just right, all of those things. It can be distracting to watch other students as well. So we think their webcams are on and they're paying attention and they're more engaged, but really they could just be watching other students and the home life and the backgrounds of other students in the class. And there's lots of research that shows demanding webcams on when students either feel uncomfortable about their home situation, or maybe they're not feeling well, can lead to increased feelings of anxiety and even isolation. And if students are forced to have them on when they don't want to, that can lead to feelings of disengagement and resistance, when what our effort is, our intention as the professor, is to encourage engagement, but it could actually be promoting disengagement. So we need to think strategically about, can we allow choice? Are there times in our synchronous meetings that we can give students the choice to turn their cameras off or on? And to be informed and to inform our students about the reasons why. Additionally, webcams on can be distracting to faculty. So I've just unshared the screen, and, you know, Misty knows I love her to death, but look at Misty right now with this fan going on over her head. Like, to me, that's a little distracting. I'm highly visual and I just can't take my eyes off of that fan. Like, it's fine, Misty, you can leave it on. But I'm just saying, look at that. And I'll tell you a funny story. A couple of weeks ago, I had all my students, their webcams were on, and there's 26 students in this class, so there's a lot of pictures on the screen. And in the bottom right-hand corner, I see it out of the corner of my eye, I really thought one of my students was hanging upside down. I didn't think her picture was upside down. I thought she was hanging upside down. And I'm trying to keep my train of thought. I'm engaged, you know, I've got all these things going on. All I could do was think, why is she hanging upside down? And I almost said something to her, and I thought, no, let her go. Like, people got to do what they got to do right now. If it helps her pay attention, because she was talking, she was writing in the chat room. She had written on the Padlet. So she was engaged. I thought, let her hang upside down. It's fine. And I recorded the class session. And as I was uploading the recording and I looked at it, I looked closely at her and I realized, oh my God, she was not hanging upside down. She had this virtual background going on with like the sun and the sky. And she had long hair and she was wearing headphones with a cord. And just all of that combination looked like she was upside down with her hair hanging, but it really wasn't at all. But I was so distracted the entire class. I was like exhausted by the end, trying not to look at her. So it can be distracting for professors as well. You know, the cognitive load that we are under right now, been managing the Zoom screens, the PowerPoint, the breakout rooms, the going to this, that app and that app during class and all this, the cognitive load is pretty heavy. So although I don't like talking to a black screen with just names, in some ways, I get a little relief when I let everyone just turn off your webcams for just the next 5 minutes. And I can just focus on what I want to say without any distractions. So just consider that. These are all just considerations. While I'm sharing the screen, has anyone else had an experience where they were distracted by webcams? All right, just me. That's fine. The other thing, we think when our webcams are on that we can then monitor our students. And coming from an elementary classroom, I'm all about monitoring students. That was my life for 17 years. However, it can be tricky to monitor students in a remote environment because look at these 4 pictures. It's difficult to tell, is she texting? Is she watching TV like Jacob told us? You know, when people look off, they're probably watching TV or playing a video game, or is she just thinking? I often take my eyes off the screen and turn them to the left if I'm considering something or thinking something. When my students do that, is it that they're not engaged, or are they looking at something else? So it's very difficult. We can't rely on what we see in front of us to actually monitor on, you know, if students are engaged or paying attention. So I just want to encourage you, when you're considering webcams, think about these 4 questions. Is there a student-centered reason for the webcam to be on during this activity? Or is it just that I don't like talking to a black screen? Are there other ways that we can actively engage students in meaningful ways throughout the class? One suggestion I read was that allow students the choice during the instruction portion. But then when you go to breakout rooms or you're doing an interactive activity, request or highly recommend that students turn their webcams on for that portion. So they don't have to sit in class the entire time, but it's when they're in small breakout rooms, they can turn on their webcams. What are you going to do about those students who either don't have a webcam or do not have strong enough internet? What are your provisions for those students? And think strongly about inclusion and issues of equity when you're designing your activities. So my biggest takeaway from this would be, whether you want webcams on or off, tell your students what the policy is, but explain the why behind it so you can get buy-in on the part of the students. Anyone want to make a quick comment before we go on to the next thing about webcams? Okay, and you're free to put comments in the chat as well. If you have something you want to say but don't want to take the time from the whole group, put it over in the chat. Okay, so some ideas for student engagement. polls and surveys are fantastic ways to either activate background knowledge, get everyone thinking. It can be as fancy as poll everywhere, but it can also be as simple as everyone throw in the chat room, what do you think about blah, 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 whatever it might be. And that's a very quick, easy way to do a poll or a survey and get your students contributing without having to actually speak. Small group discussions and activities using those breakout rooms. I cannot say enough about it. There are so many times when my students won't say a word in class, nothing, when we're a whole group like this. Put them in a breakout group, give them 5 minutes, and I pop into the groups and listen, and they're all talking like crazy, and they're contributing, and they're building ideas off each other. Even to the point I let the breakout rooms go a little longer, and I have to force them to close because they are engaging. They're just not talking whole group. And I think we have to be careful and not mix up those two things. Just because students are not unmuting and speaking during our synchronous classes doesn't mean they're not engaging. We need to think of ways to let them express their engagement and contribute to ideas that are more than just unmute yourselves and answer this question. So short mini lessons, and then intermixed with interactive activities and experiences are excellent. No one wants to sit and listen to someone talk for an hour on their computer. Have opportunities for students to contribute. And then a flipped classroom model. This is working wonderfully across campus where students build their knowledge and their understanding outside of class and then come to class and contribute, ask questions, get help from the professor. This is where you can address any misconceptions you see, collaborate with peers. You know, many of our students are working a lot of hours outside of class. And if we can have opportunities for them to engage with each other during our class time, that's very beneficial to them because they often do not have a lot of time outside of class to do group work. So creating group work inside our class time is very helpful for our students. And lastly, yes, go ahead.
I say, if I can jump in, I've been studying the flipped classroom model. I'm actually gathering my results and writing it up now. And our students in social work anyway are reporting that they like the mixture because when we do our synchronous class, it's all activity based. And I don't have issues with engagement. I don't have issues with cameras off. So yeah, I agree. The flipped classroom model works well.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
And there, anyone else?
Yeah, can I also add to that? Deb Shihai and I know that we're taking this approach of flipped classroom, and she can speak, with her class, but we both teach a methods course for our teacher licensure students that would, when we were face-to-face, meet with them live twice a week. And knowing that all of our students are either asynchronous, synchronous, but regardless behind a laptop, we thought that it would be in the best interest for our students to meet live with them synchronously one day of those weeks. And so we flipped those days and I'm looking at a different monitor screen. As we talk about WEBCAM, I'm not looking away, I'm looking at the bigger screen. But it really lent itself by meeting them just that once a week to do this flipped classroom approach so that they can spend that time. So we're not eliminating that class, that meeting date by any means, but we're really allowing them that time to prepare prior to coming to class so that it is much more engaged. So, and like I said, it's helpful for those students that it's just, a couple hours less of actual screen time for them. And that in itself helps with their motivation and feeling encouraged and wanting to come to those live meetings. So there's like really good incentives with that.
It sounds like we're using a similar approach. Yeah. And I'm finding the same thing. They're just ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that helps build on that energy because then when they do come together, they're not, they're ready to contribute and put forth energy into that class session. Yeah. All right, there are so many tools out there, it can be overwhelming. And honestly, I felt a little overwhelmed this summer because I wanted to learn everything and incorporate everything, and you just can't. So I encourage you, if you're looking for ways to build engagement during your synchronous class sessions, Pick 1 or 2 tools and learn how to do it and do it well, because it's nearly impossible to do all of these things. And there's so many things out there. So I just listed my top 3 favorite. Well, it's not my favorites. It's the only 3 I do, quite honestly. Poll Everywhere. Well, I do Kahoot, but it's under the polls and the surveys. Padlet and Flipgrid. And I feel like now, 6 weeks in, I've got a handle on it. Maybe I'll try 1 more before the end of the semester, but if I don't, that's okay. You're better off pick a few and do them well and feel comfortable with them and incorporate them and implement in your classroom in meaningful ways. So the last thing I want to share, and then before I share Flipgrid, the TTC has, it's the best resource I have seen anywhere on engaging strategies you can do in your classroom. But what I love is they give their tutorials. Sometimes there's screencast-o-matic videos to tell us how to do it. Other times it's just written directions, but they don't just give you a link, they tell you how to do it. So I encourage you, visit that site. It's linked here, and we'll be sharing this PowerPoint with you. Go to that site and get some instruction, and just, you kind of have to jump in the water and try one of these things, and you realize it's not quite as difficult as we may have imagined. The last thing I'm just going to share super quick with you is Flipgrid. So this is one way that I have our students engage outside of class and inside. So what we do with this is it's very easy for students to make videos. So this is my class on teaching English learners. The students were to do a read aloud. So this young woman here, she did a read aloud. She implemented the differentiated questions, which was the assignment. And then I was able to watch her video, which is absolutely adorable. And then I gave her video feedback in response, which I love this video feedback. And one thing I learned from Castania the other day is within Blackboard, we can record oral feedback to students. And I just love that because I'm sick of typing. I feel like I'm just typing all of the time. And this is the thing I tried since hearing Castania say this little feature about Blackboard on Tuesday. And I think my feedback was so much richer and deeper versus me trying to type in that little box that you get. And I don't know, I think my feedback was much richer and deeper and stronger because of that. All right. We have just a couple of minutes left. Deb.
I wondered since Tuesday, how do you do that in Blackboard? The video feedback or audio feedback in Blackboard. Can you show that?
Oh, let's see if I can get there. Eric, can you talk about it real quick while I'm looking? Since you're here, we have an expert sitting right here.
There's yeah, I don't know if I have a good example to show, but essentially there's a you know how when you do anything in Blackboard, you've got they call it a WYSIWYG editor. There's a panel with your bold, with your italics. You can change the font, etc. I think it's there.
It is.
Yeah, when you're reviewing an assignment, you'll see it's like I think it's like a microphone icon. Let's see if I can find it.
It is. It's a microphone. One little problem, and I was just looking at Blackboard. Here's the thing, though. Once I give it, like it's gone. Like I don't know how to find it now, or I would show it to you, Deb. And I was looking. Do I have any maybe like late assignments or something that I haven't given feedback, and none of them are late. So that's the problem. Once I send it, I don't know how to find it again, but
that's okay. I just appreciate it because
I found it in that little box. You know, you're on Blackboard, you have that little box you could type in
your feedback. Yes.
Yeah. Underneath that was the little microphone, not microphone, but almost looked like a volume button.
Okay. I'll look for that. Thank you.
Just posted something in the chat, just a link that you can check out. It's got some cool pictures and it shows the instructions for how you do it.
Cool. And I love the poll everywhere. I don't mean to dominate the conversation, but where do we access that? Probably everyone else knows, but.
Well, you can start by going to the TTC website if you want, and they have on the left-hand side all the teaching resources, and Poll Everywhere is there. So I started there, read the directions, and do what it says. It's like a recipe. You do what it says, and it works. And then I realized there's the link in Blackboard to takes you right to Poll Everywhere. Okay. Anything I'm missing, Eric, about Poll Everywhere?
Yeah, it's in the Blackboard tools.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can just email us at ttc@bridgew.edu and we'll activate your instructor Poll Everywhere account. You'll get an email to get started.
And it's fast. They emailed me back like in, I don't know, a minute. It was super fast.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you all
And it's,
so
ea-
much.
I mean, it's a little, I won't say it's easy. Like you have to really read to kind of figure out how to do it. But once you made one Poll Everywhere, it's not difficult at all. You can do it very short. And the students loved it. They absolutely loved it. And I'll say one little thing about Poll Everywhere. I used it 2 weeks ago for the first, no, I didn't. This week. And I'm sorry. So I meet one class twice a week. I did it for the first time this week to hold them accountable for their reading. And I asked a very easy question. Not one student got it right. And I thought, I knew you guys weren't reading this before you came to class. But next week, 2 days later, I did it again. 100%. They all got it right. And so it really is a great way to hold students accountable for doing the reading or outside work.
And
That's cool.
And with Poll Everywhere, you said that we have to email Eric or TTC to get to create that account first. You can't do that through the Blackboard Tools link. Okay.
That's correct.
Like just follow the directions, what it says on their TTC site, and they email you
Okay.
back with the link or the registration super quickly. Anything else anyone's used? Any cool tools, any cool strategies, anything else you guys would like to share?
Well, you were going to tell us how to keep something free.
Oh, thank you, Deb.
And
Go ahead.
while you're figuring that out, I would share that I've had a lot of luck, particularly in breakout rooms with Jamboard, which is part of the Google Classroom. I don't know if you've used that or not, Andrea.
I have not used it as a professor, but I have been in meetings where we've used it. So
And-
anything else that I mean, it's fantastic. Mhm.
So if you pose, like what I'll do sometimes when I go to class and I have 30 people in class, and so I'll probably have like 10 groups of 3, something like that. And I'll have a question at the top of each Jamboard. I send them the link before the class starts. And so if you're in breakout group 1, you look at Jamboard page number 1. They all have all of them. But then on the Jamboard, as they're talking with each other and then deciding what to use as a visual display, everybody can work on that at the same time. So that's kind of cool. And they can pull up pictures from the internet. They can do words, they can do sticky notes. It's very colorful and whatnot. And then I can see who's progressing along, and then who needs maybe a little help or has a question or something like that. So I found that kind of an interesting way for them to answer individual questions, and then we share that out to the large group.
Yeah.
Kind of like you would in a classroom.
Exactly. And you can save the Jamboards, like when you're finished, you can save it so you refer back to it later, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. I think Jamboard has a lot more to it than Padlet. Padlet is just a really quick, if it's just words that you want students to put on there, but you can rearrange the words. Now, Padlet is free, and Eric, jump in and correct me if I'm saying anything incorrectly, but the free version, you only get so many Padlets that you can make in a period of time. But there's a little workaround. So like right now I'm at my limit. So if I tried to make another Padlet, watch it work. Yeah. See, it's going to tell me, oh, you've reached your limit. You have to pay $8. Well, I'm too cheap. I'm not paying another $8 for anything. So I just go in and keep using the same Padlet over and over, and I'll just change the name of it. So like this is one we started last night, but I don't want to change it right now. But if I wanted to use one today, I would just go over here and revise it and start changing it and just use it over and over. So that's a little trick that you can not have to pay. Just make your limit and then edit them and reuse them over and over.
Cool. That's good to know.
Okay, anything else? I love your comment, Shannon. We try something a few times, and this is why I say it's good to pick a few things, try them, do them well, like get good at it before you keep adding more and more things. Because it does, again, the cognitive load is pretty heavy on all of us right now. And when you have to get sort of familiar, it's like driving a car. When you first start driving, you're worrying about the blinker and the brake and the shifting gears or whatever. lots to worry about. Well, after you do it a while, you don't think about any of it. And I think that's how we have to get comfortable with these online platforms. Anything else anybody wants to share?
I've been using, and I know we're out of time, so just really quickly, I won't really explain it, but just mention what they are. I've been using almost faithfully every class, either Pear Deck or Nearpod, because they both, free and very user-friendly, but they both create a very student-centered approach to the teaching and learning process, and has definitely helped with the student engagement.
Because like with Nearpod, you can embed things within your PowerPoints or whatever, right? That
Yeah, they've actually with within Google Slides, you can now merge everything. You can merge your PowerPoint slides in a Google slide with Nearpod and Pear Deck. So you just can go to one place. You can even now with Nearpod integrate it with Zoom. So instead of having to minimize things, maximize things, or students having to minimize, maximize, you can do it in one place. So it just makes it so much more user-friendly.
And isn't that under the add-ons section in Google Slides?
Yep. So if you just, the first thing you need to do is download Pear Deck. And then once that's downloaded, it only takes a couple minutes. When you get into your Google Slide, you'll see an add-on tab. And once you click that, it'll drop down and show you the things that you have downloaded. So Pear Deck, I've used like that virtual classroom with Bitmoji. You can see all of that stuff in Google Slides.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's my next one I want to tackle. Go ahead, Deb.
Both of you are rock stars.
You're a rock star.
I always learn so much.
So I want to, I know some people have had to go, and I appreciate that, but I feel like we could talk for hours, and it's just so nice to see everybody again.
I know. Thanks, Andrea, for doing this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And again, please let OTL know how can we support folks, whether it's yourself or something you hear, because we are all in this together, and we definitely want to, help each other out.
Yeah. Listen, I'm going to be turning my fan off now in my live classes. I didn't even think about it.
In one of my classes too, I had, one of my students, she has 2 little kids. And of course, when we meet synchronously, we only meet like every third week synchronously, but her husband's at work. So it's herself at home with her 2 little kids. And one of them's like 3, was blinking the lights on and off. So in the background, like you could see
the
her
strobe light
on and off. I'm like, oh my God, this poor woman, how she's doing it.
What's so funny though is that Andrea was worried about the fan. I was worried someone was coming at the window behind you. I never even saw the fan. I'm like, oh yeah,
I didn't see that.
No wonder
it reminded me of a helicopter pilot.
I know. With my headset. My gosh, that's why my students look like they're paying attention. They're looking at all the other random stuff behind me.
Morgan may want to stop recording.
Oh yeah.
I think you should hang a Kansas City banner back there.